Imagine you are walking through the bustling streets of Manila. The air is thick with humidity and the sound of traffic. You pass a jeepney, vibrantly decorated, its driver calling out routes in a mix of Tagalog and English. You step into a modern shopping mall, and a security guard politely directs you in flawless English. You turn on the television, and the news broadcast, the comedy show, even the local commercial for soap are all in English. Now, travel to Tokyo, Seoul, or Bangkok. The experience is different. The language barrier is palpable. In Vietnam or Indonesia, you might struggle to find someone who can understand your questions. But in the Philippines, it feels familiar, almost like a home away from home. This isn't a coincidence. It's a national phenomenon. The Philippines doesn't just speak English. It has woven the language into the very fabric of its identity. It consistently ranks as one of the top English-proficient countries in Asia, often surpassing wealthier and more developed nations. How did this happen? How did an archipelago of over 7,000 islands, with its own rich and ancient languages, become a bastion of English in the heart of Asia? The story is not a simple one. It is an epic tale of colonial history, deliberate national policy, economic survival, and cultural fusion. It's a story that begins with war, is solidified in classrooms propelled by pop culture, and supercharged by the global economy. This is the untold story of why the Philippines speaks better English than most of Asia. A journey into the heart of a nation's unique relationship with a global language. Our journey begins not in a school, but on a battlefield. The year is 1898. The Spanish-American War is concluding, and with the Treaty of Paris, the United States acquires the Philippines from Spain, ending over 330 years of Spanish rule. America found a colony where Spanish was the language of the government and the elite, but where the masses spoke a multitude of indigenous languages. The new American administrators faced a challenge: how to govern and unify this diverse and sprawling territory. Their solution was radical and transformative. They decided that education would be the cornerstone of their colonial policy, and the medium of that education would be English. This was a strategic masterstroke. Unlike the Spanish, who used education to convert and control through religion, the Americans aimed to create a populace that could be governed efficiently and that would be sympathetic to American ideals. English was the tool for this massive social engineering project. In 1901, the American government sent a ship named the USS Thomas, carrying 540 American teachers to the Philippines. These educators, who would become known as the Thomasites, fanned out across the islands, often in remote and challenging conditions, to establish a public school system from the ground up. Their mission was clear: to teach English to every Filipino child. This was the crucial, foundational moment. English was not introduced as a foreign language subject, as it is in many countries. It was introduced as the language of instruction itself. From the first grade, Filipino children learned math, science, and history in English. This immersion method is incredibly effective. The children weren't just learning about English, they were learning in English. Their world of knowledge was being built in this new language. This policy had a democratizing effect. Under Spanish rule, education was limited and often tied to the church. Under the Americans, a massive public school system opened up education, and with it, the English language, to the masses. It was no longer the privilege of the ilustrado, the educated elite. It was the right of the farmer's son and the fisherman's daughter. This early, widespread, and deep immersion gave the Philippines a head start that most other Asian nations simply did not have. While other countries were grappling with their own post-colonial identities and often promoting their native languages, The Philippines had already planted the seed of English deep within its soil, and it was beginning to sprout. The next critical chapter in our story is World War II. The war was devastating for the Philippines, but it also strangely reinforced the bond with America. The shared experience of fighting the Japanese, the famous return of General Douglas MacArthur, and the eventual granting of independence in 1946 created a special relationship between the two nations. When the Philippines became an independent republic, its founding fathers faced a monumental decision. What would be the national language? There was a strong movement to promote a language based on Tagalog, which would eventually become Filipino, to foster a unified national identity. But there was also a clear-eyed, pragmatic recognition of the value of English. The leaders of the new nation understood that English was their ticket to the world. It was the language of international diplomacy, of science and technology, and of their most important ally and trading partner, the United States. So, they made a brilliant and forward-thinking compromise. The 1935 Constitution, and later the 1987 Constitution, established both Filipino and English as official languages. The Philippines became an officially bilingual nation. This was not just a symbolic gesture. It was a policy with teeth. The government mandated the use of both languages in government transactions, the courts, and crucially, in education. This policy ensured that English did not fade away after independence. It was institutionalized. It remained the language of the Supreme Court, of legislation, and of higher education. Walking through any government office in Manila, you would see signs, forms, and documents in both languages. This continued official status kept English relevant and necessary. It wasn't a colonial relic. It was a tool for modern nation building. A lawyer needed English to practice law. A bureaucrat needed English to advance in government. A student needed English to get into a good university. This post-independence endorsement is a key differentiator. In other former colonies, there was often a strong nationalist backlash against the language of the colonizer. In India, for example, Hindi was promoted aggressively, though English remained an associate official language. In Indonesia, Bahasa Indonesia was championed as a unifying national language after independence from the Dutch. But in the Philippines, there was less of a backlash. English was seen less as a symbol of oppression and more as a practical tool that had been made available to the people through the public school system. It was associated with modernity and progress, not just with subjugation. This pragmatic embrace allowed English to flourish, while Filipino culture and languages also grew stronger. Now, let's step into a Filipino home in the 1970s or 1980s. What would we see? The television is on. The shows are a mix of local programming and American imports. Families gathered to watch American sitcoms like Happy Days and Three's Company, action shows like Starsky and Hutch, and cartoons like Scooby-Doo. The radio played the latest hits from the Beatles, Elvis Presley, and later Michael Jackson and Madonna. This was not a minor influence. It was a cultural deluge. For decades, Hollywood was the dominant source of entertainment. This constant, daily, and enjoyable exposure to English was a form of mass, informal language education. Filipinos weren't just learning grammar from a book. They were absorbing the rhythm, the slang, the intonation, and the casual flow of the language from their favorite stars. They learned how to use English in everyday situations, how to joke, how to argue, how to express love. This cultural immersion had a profound effect on the accent as well. Linguists note that the Filipino accent is often considered very neutral and easy for Americans to understand. This is largely because the model for English learning was not the British received pronunciation, as in Singapore or India, but general American English, the kind heard in Hollywood movies and American pop music. This made Filipino English highly compatible with the world's largest English-speaking market. This deep cultural integration led to one of the most fascinating linguistic phenomena in the Philippines: Taglish. Taglish is the effortless and seamless switching between Tagalog and English within a single sentence, or even within a single thought. A person might say, "I'm going to the palengke later, but I need to withdraw muna from the ATM. Can you text me if you need anything?" This code switching is not seen as a sign of poor language skills in either tongue. On the contrary, it is a marker of fluency and modernity. It demonstrates a complete comfort with both languages, an ability to use the most efficient word from either lexicon to express a thought. Taglish is the living proof that English is not a foreign language in the Philippines. It is a fully integrated component of the modern Filipino linguistic identity. It is the language of the home, the street, and the coffee shop, not just the office or the classroom. While culture planted the seeds of everyday English, it was economics that would supercharge its importance and turn proficiency into a national industry. The story of the Philippine economy in the late 20th and early 21st centuries is the story of its people going global, and English was their passport. This began with the phenomenon of overseas Filipino workers, or OFWs. Starting in the 1970s, the Philippine government, under President Ferdinand Marcos, began actively promoting labor export as a way to alleviate unemployment and bring in foreign currency. Millions of Filipinos left to work as nurses, engineers, sailors, domestic helpers, and caregivers in the Middle East, North America, Europe, and Asia. For these economic heroes, English was not an academic subject. It was a survival skill. A nurse needed English to understand doctor's orders and patient charts in a hospital in London or Riyadh. A ship engineer needed English to communicate with a multinational crew on a container vessel. A domestic helper needed English to understand the needs of her employer in Hong Kong or Singapore. The success and safety of these millions of workers depended directly on their command of English. This created a powerful feedback loop. Families in the Philippines saw that English fluency led to high-paying jobs abroad. Remittances from OFWs became, and remain, a massive pillar of the Philippine economy. This provided a powerful, tangible incentive for every family to ensure their children mastered English. It was the key to a better life, to building a house, to sending siblings to school. English became directly linked to financial success and social mobility on a massive scale. Then, at the turn of the millennium, a new industry exploded onto the scene that would cement the Philippines' status as an English-speaking powerhouse, the business process outsourcing, or BPO industry. In the early 2000s, American and European companies began looking for places to outsource their customer service, technical support, and back-office operations. They needed a country with a large, educated, and English-speaking workforce, a compatible time zone, and lower labor costs. The Philippines was the perfect fit. The country actively marketed itself as the call center capital of the world. The BPO industry grew at a staggering rate. From a few thousand jobs, it now employs over 1 million Filipinos and generates tens of billions of dollars in revenue annually. For a young Filipino university graduate, a job in a call center is often one of the most accessible and well-paying career paths available. But to get that job, they must pass a rigorous English proficiency test. Their accent is evaluated for neutrality and clarity. Their grammar and comprehension are tested. This created a direct market demand for high-quality English. Colleges and universities adapted their curricula to meet this demand. Private language academies sprouted up to coach applicants. The economic reward for speaking good English became immediate and substantial. A call center agent can earn significantly more than a teacher or a local government clerk. This economic engine constantly renews and reinforces the importance of English. It is no longer just about history or culture. It is about getting a job tomorrow. It creates a perpetual cycle where proficiency is practiced, valued, and financially rewarded on a massive scale. No other country in Asia has an economic structure so intensely and directly tied to English language proficiency for such a large segment of its urban workforce. Now, we must look at the very structure of learning, at the educational system that has sustained this proficiency for over a century. The Philippine basic education system, from elementary school to high school, remains largely bilingual. While there have been policy shifts, such as the recent mother tongue-based multilingual education, which introduces early learning in local languages, English remains a core subject and a medium of instruction for key subjects, especially in science and mathematics. This means that for 12 years, a Filipino student is consistently exposed to formal English education. Furthermore, the language of higher education, particularly in prestigious universities and in fields like medicine, engineering, law, and business, is predominantly English. Textbooks are in English. Lectures are delivered in English. Exams are written in English. To succeed in university and in a professional career, a high level of academic English is required. This creates a pipeline of graduates who are not just conversationally fluent, but who can use English in complex, technical, and professional contexts. This is a crucial differentiator. In many countries, English is taught as a foreign language, with a focus on grammar and vocabulary for a few hours a week. In the Philippines, it is treated as a second language, a tool for actual communication and knowledge acquisition. The difference in outcome is profound. The environment itself is a teacher. Walk down any street in a major Philippine city. Look at the billboards. You will see advertisements for condominiums, smartphones, and soft drinks in English. Listen to the radio. Many pop songs, even by local artists, have English lyrics. Read a local newspaper. The headlines are in English. This print-rich environment, saturated with English, provides constant, passive reinforcement. It normalizes the language and makes it an unavoidable part of the daily landscape. This contrasts with countries like Japan or South Korea, where, despite rigorous English education in schools, the outside environment is almost entirely in the native language, leaving little opportunity for practical application. The Filipino attitude towards English is also a significant factor. There is very little shyness or fear of making mistakes. Because English is so deeply integrated, people are not afraid to use it. They code switch freely. They experiment. This lack of linguistic insecurity promotes fluency and confidence. In many other Asian cultures, where saving face is important, the fear of speaking imperfect English can be a major barrier to practice. In the Philippines, the focus is on communication, not perfection. If the meaning gets across, the language has done its job. This pragmatic and confident approach is a huge asset. It is also important to address the role of the family. In many middle-class and aspirational families, parents actively encourage their children to speak English at home. They see it as an investment in their future. They buy them English storybooks, let them watch English language cartoons, and enroll them in schools known for strong English programs. This parental push, combined with the national policy and economic incentives, creates a powerful trifecta of support for English acquisition from the state, the market, and the home. Finally, we must consider the linguistic structure of Philippine languages themselves. Major languages like Tagalog have already absorbed a significant amount of Spanish and English vocabulary, making the adoption of English loanwords less jarring. The grammatical structures, while different, are not as vastly distant from English as, for example, the grammar of Japanese or Korean. This relative linguistic proximity can make the learning process somewhat easier. So, when we piece together this intricate puzzle, the picture becomes clear. The Philippines' English proficiency is not the result of one single factor, but a unique and powerful convergence of several. It began with a historical accident, American colonization, but was then deliberately chosen and maintained after independence as an official language of a bilingual nation. It was woven into the cultural fabric through decades of American media influence, leading to a comfortable hybrid linguistic identity exemplified by Taglish. But most importantly, it was supercharged by economics. The need for overseas employment and the explosion of the BPO industry made English a valuable commodity, a direct conduit to financial security and national revenue. This created a society-wide, tangible incentive that keeps the standard of English high and relevant. The educational system provides the foundation, the culture provides the practice, and the economy provides the motivation. This self-reinforcing ecosystem is what sets the Philippines apart. In other Asian nations, one or two of these factors might be present, but rarely all of them in such a potent combination. In Japan and South Korea, despite massive investment in English education, the language lacks daily utility and strong economic incentives for the average person. In India, English is a language of the elite and the urban educated, but it has not permeated all levels of society to the same extent as in the Philippines due to vast socioeconomic disparities. In Singapore, English is the primary language of administration and education, but it exists in a very different city-state context, without the massive labor export dynamic. The Philippine story is unique. It is the story of a nation that took a language imposed upon it and turned it into a strategic asset. It is a story of adaptability and pragmatism. English, in the Philippine context, is not a symbol of erasing one's identity. It is a tool for expressing that identity on the global stage. It is the language used by a nurse in Dubai to save a life, by a call center agent in Manila to solve a problem for a customer in Texas, by a sailor on a ship to navigate the world's oceans, and by a family in the province to dream of a better future. It is this deep, practical, and unbroken connection to opportunity that ensures the voice of the Philippines continues to be heard clearly in the world's most common language. The warmth and skill with which they speak, it is not just a linguistic feat, it is a testament to their resilience, their ambition, and their enduring connection to the world. And that is why the Philippines speaks better English than most of Asia.